Here we go. Another live session of Truth Proof this Thursday. Welcome, Paul.
Welcome, Les. And yeah, like we say every week, it soon comes round. And looking forward to tonight talking to Holly and letting her share some experiences and just seeing where that leads. I think it's going to be a good one. And what have you been up to, Les?
Well, I've just been collecting a few more stories for the Truth Proof YouTube channel. So that's all well and good, all coming together. And which all takes time, as you know, Paul, because of all the shorts that you put together and send through. And massive amounts of time spent on there, isn't there?
I'm doing one at the moment. And I think people will know, anybody listening to this, me and editing, my skills are pretty limited, but I do edit all them, don't I, Les? And you put the front and the back on them. And it's took me ages, but we're doing one called The Riddle of the Empty Camp. We might retitle it, but when it goes out, but that's going to be it in you soon. And there's a bit of work gone into that one about, it's a tragedy, 3 missing people. So yeah, that might be worth people listening to. Yeah. And I can see we've got quite a few people in chat, Les.
Yeah. If you want to go through some names.
Stargazer, Ginge, Disabled Welshman, Alex Thompson. Hi, Alex. Alex were with us last night. He absolutely poured it down. And fair crack to you, mate, because you travelled 45 minutes. Tino. I've said Alex, anti, and Nigel Spate. I know Rev's in, so he's not, I've just seen name pop up there. Linny's in. Pete will be watching. Minnie Moose. Always good to see you. Mrs. Linny, Robert Hilton. Jess is doing moderating for us. Sober Carper and Patrick Daniel. Hi, Patrick. And we still need to have that chat. Richie White and Martin Abbas, a great friend, and loads more that the honesty man.
And I've got to say, I've got to thank Tina and others who have sent potential guests names through for us, Paul. So we'll be looking at those. We have got them on the radar.
Yeah, there's been some great suggestions, to be honest with you, and thank you for everybody that's put people forward. I mean, there's somebody sent me something today, which we'll get to eventually, and we need to get him on as a guest.
But talking of great guests, I'm going to disappear. Come back on for any questions, and we'll bring your guest on, Paul.
Okay, that's brilliant. Hi, Holly.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Oh, no, it's fabulous. It's great to speak to you. I mean, for those that don't know, Holly presented and were front of stage at the Awakening conference a few weeks ago, introducing the speakers, which were absolutely brilliant, and you did an amazing job. So thank you for that. But there'll be a lot of people. There's not as many ladies. There's not as many women in ufology and you're one of them, and I'd describe you as a prominent woman within the subject of ufology, as well as an experiencer and researcher. So Holly Ann Wood, welcome to Truth Proof.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
No, you're welcome. And we talk about cryptids, we talk about the darker side of ufology, and you've got lots of input, not just on the darker side, but on the nicer aspect of ufology as well. So I no doubt we're going to hear a little bit about that tonight. But how about just giving us an outline, a breakdown of Holly?
Me, I am by day, I'm a marketing manager. I'm a mum of 1. I'm a very ordinary person by day. I'm sort of outside of daily life. I'm heavily into the UAP topic, UFO topic. I'm an experiencer, and I am a facilitator of sort of CE5 or HICE, as I like to call it. So I lead like two lives at once, which is interesting. Interesting.
And you're really good on social media side of it, aren't you? You're promoting the subject, whereas I'll hold my hands up and say I'm pretty useless at that side of it. But
do you know, Paul?
You've got all sorts of I don't know, irons in the fire of projects that you're working on. I mean, we can start with some of them now, or we can get to them later. I mean, I'd like to start with your early years and how you became involved in subject, really.
So my entry into the subject was a little strange, really. I'm from a Northern Irish Catholic family descendant, and very Catholic. But my mum was very liberal. She was really into the occult. She was a practicing witch, mystic, all of those, wooey type things. And as a small child, the sort of a lot of the sort of paranormal and supernatural was kind of around us. When my first interaction with the phenomenon, which I didn't even know was the phenomenon, we were in Wiltshire and Mum was down there conducting a magical rite with a coven of fellow witches on the chalk horse, which is etched into the hills of the Salisbury Plain. And I was there with some other children. I think we'd been thrown a can of pop and some crisps and told to be quiet while the adults did their magical ritual. And me and 3 other children were sat inside the eye of the horse, and an orange sun, as I described it, a mini sun, which we would now call an orb, presented itself to us in that eye and moved around. But as an 8-9-year-old who knew that magic was real because her mum was a witch, it didn't actually seem that odd. It was like, okay, that's happened.
And I mean, we'll get back to the orange orb. Well, we'll stay with the orb, but it's the colour. Just to jump away from it, do you find when you're listening to other people's reports and other people's accounts of the strange and unusual, orange orbs seem to figure in a lot of the accounts?
They do. And that's what, fast forward in my life, when I started researching a little bit more as an adult, when I started hearing more and more accounts of orbs, not orange suns, that's when I was like, oh my goodness, this has been part of my life since I was a child. And then that started a whole rabbit hole, which I think I'm still crawling down to this day.
So the children, you're there, you're aged between what, 8 and 9, did you say?
I think about 8 or 9. My mum was really liberal.
How many children?
Me and 2 other kids. It was a young boy called Biza, and I think it was his sister. But at that time, Mum was very anti-establishment, so I wasn't living a traditional kid's life. We lived on traveller sites. We lived with gypsies at a time. We spent time in the New Forest with an off-grid coven. So I was just exposed to all kinds of odd, extraordinary stuff. But that's when the phenomena as such first interacted, and I didn't really think anything of it because it happened again and again and again.
Yeah. So having so many ties to the earth, to the land, because that you were closer to nature, I would have thought, than most children of your age in UK. I'm not expecting you to have an answer for this one because it's probably a long time ago when you spent time on traveller sites. But did they talk about it?
Yeah. So with my mum being sort of Wiccan, we celebrated nature more than maybe normal folk did. So we'd celebrate the seasons, the high holidays, when it was autumn, when it was harvest time. We really celebrated them, and nature was our guide. So I've always had a real strong connection to the earth, really strong connection. This is where I sound very woo, very strong connection to the moon. And we spent our summer holidays at ancient sites around Britain and Ireland. There's not an ancient site in the British Isles that I've not been to. And that's where we summer holidayed, and that's where we would hug stones. That's where Mum would teach me to dowse and feel the earth energies and the aquaphors. That was just some kids were watching telly. I was out with a crystal pendulum at Avebury. So I've just always had a very strong connection to the earth, and that's still very much part of my life. Every day I spend at least 10 minutes with my feet in the soil in my garden, just to keep that connection always.
And were you homeschooled?
Wasn't homeschooled as such, but I was in and out of education a lot because Mum was she was as wild as the wind.
Yeah. You're just painting a picture of your lifestyle, which is really different and interesting, isn't it? And you get people. I'm not naming anybody, and there's no axe to grind, but you get people who are into the subject of dowsing and into the Wiccan, and they're doing it by what they see on the internet and then visiting places. But this is proper boots on ground, because this is a side of Holly that when you went to conference and you all sort of dressed up and beautiful, that people don't know that side of you, do they? Do you know? Which is it's
Not
fascinating.
really. And I say this, my mum passed a couple of years ago, and one of my retrospective thoughts was, what a magical education I've had, because I'm very lucky in some of the work I do now. I know occultists, I know witches, I know practicing this, that, and the other, and people go on courses to learn these things. I think, oh, I should know that, and then actually, I'm like, I do. So she really gave me exposure to some of the most extraordinary things. We had Ouija boards in our house. Like that was a fun activity.
So, right then, let's stay with that then for a moment. And I'm not for or against. So, were there any? Tell us about the good experiences and the bad experiences, if any, using that as a tool to contact the unknown.
Well, Mum always communioned with the others or the dead or entities. Mum would just call them the others. Yep. I don't know if that was non-human intelligence.
That's what I'm saying, the unknown others, because we don't know what they are. Yeah.
I can't really recall anything like super scary or frightening. There was one incident I kind of vaguely recall where, after whatever had happened, because Mum, we always had visitors because she was quite a celebrated underground mystic. And, back then in the late 80s and 90s, it wasn't as accepted as it is now. So it was very underground. There was a druid, there was a rabbi, there was a traveler, there was always someone in the house doing something. So our house was supernatural anyway. I do recall one experience where there was a lot of bangs and wallops, and so the energy of our home wasn't like it was. And I remember Mum making us all do Hail Marys round a fire, but that's the only kind of weird scary thing. But and this might be controversial to some people, and I am friends with people in the paranormal community, things only have power when you give it power. So for me, a Ouija board is only going to have the power that I allow it to have. And that's the way I treat them.
Yeah, and you've more knowledge of this than me, Holly, but I mean, my thoughts on it, do you not think that whatever it is we're dealing with in some instances is a trickster, and it's probably giving us what we want anyway? I know that you're saying you ultimately... So do you think it's our intent then that decides the outcome of what?
To a degree, Paul, yes. And I'm sure we'll get onto it with the HICE stuff. I think intent is really important. But I'm we all evolve, we're all learning, every day is a school day. Intent is super important, and I think that takes us 60-70% of the way. But I do think there is a trickster element to this. And it's the trickster element that has really caught my interest over the past 6 months and changed the way I go about things, because I did have an experience that was very different to anything I'd ever had before.
And it
did. Yeah, last July, actually, I had a very startling experience that kind of altered my course.
Shall we? We definitely want to do it, and we want to do the HICE. But I want to stay in the for a moment, just in these younger years, if we can. So the occult. Once again, I'm neutral. I'm not going to say I'm a for or against, but how much influence do you think the occult and occult practice has on for instance, the UFO phenomena or the cryptid phenomena? Do you think it's like, as I spoke about in the talk at the Awakening, do you think it's actually this unknown other that's giving us what we want?
I think it's certainly all linked. The phenomena in its entirety is all intrinsically linked. I think it's all part of some, excuse me, it's all part of some thread that we just don't understand or have the scientific, understanding of. The occult, when you really understand the occult, the unseen, you can see the parallels it draws with the UAP stuff. Even the cryptid stuff, even the
Yeah.
Bigfoot stuff, it's all about energy. It's all about the transmutation of energy, and it's all about, a higher power as such, and seeking where that will is driven from. But I struggle sometimes when people think they're in different boxes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
'Cause for
Without a doubt.
me, they're all linked. We might not know how, but I think it would, for me, and in my opinion, it's either ignorance in a blissful way to not think they're linked, or naivety on our part to not think they're linked. So the occult element for me is as powerful as the nuts and bolt element, but they're all just bumping together on the road of the phenomenon, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And, I think let's stay with awakening for a moment, because it's still fresh in his mind. In a way, that we know it were called the darker side of ufology, but I think what a lot of the speakers brought together, Holly, well, the fact that what you've just said there, everyone who spoke understood. I'm not saying we're right, by the way, but that's what I think. That it's linked. It's intrinsically linked, and you can see the links. If you've not got to look far. Spoke about it at the conference about the mind speak. It runs through it all. I call it the intermind communication, but the medium and clairaudience, they have the mind speak. The cryptid phenomena speaks to them in the mind. The alien abduction phenomena, it's the same exotic science running through it all. And there's so many aspects to it. But I know we're on the same page with that for definite. Yeah. So in those younger years, then, if we're staying 8 to 9 years old, is there any other experiences that you want to touch on?
Yeah.
I know there's one when you were around 13 years old.
Yeah,
But if got anything younger?
There was always something weird,
happening.
Mum would be asked to go and exercise at home, and I'd just be taken along with her. So it was just always part of our existence. I actually, Paul, didn't realise that we were different until I went to high school. I just thought everyone lived like that. I just didn't. We didn't have like medicine. Mum would go and like make something.
Yeah.
I just lived differently. And it was when I got to sort of high school, and, they knew all stuff like that was cool and in. And I was like, I've just been climbing trees in Glastonbury. I don't know. So it was all just a bit, but, coming into my teenage years, I was probably what you would call a gifted sort of child in terms of intelligence. And even though I was in and out of school a lot, gifted was something that was always sort of bestowed on me, which is not always that much fun when you're a kid, because people have high expectations of you. But because of this giftedness and my thirst for knowledge, we got the internet. We were like the first family on the street to get like a computer like the size of a bus with a dial-up connection, like all them funny noises. And I remember going online, and I don't even think Google was around. I think it was like Ask Jeeves or something. And I typed in like UFO or something. Like an explosion of
knowledge,
information. Yeah. Roswell, Area 51, Bob Lazar, and I was like, I have found my people. And that was really that's when it really started to like click with me that these orbs and this stuff that I'd experienced wasn't normal. It didn't happen to everyone. There was some kind of conspiracy around it. There was a secret, and it just made me want to know more. And I became quite obsessive about it. I'm a bit of a loner anyway, but stick me in a broom cupboard.
How about school friends then? And friends, how did they react then? Or because I would have thought probably most of them wouldn't have been on the same page, would they?
No. I struggle to make friends, which might sound quite strange to you, given how confident I probably come across. But I was quite a bit of a loner of a child, and
Yeah.
the friends I did make, I was always a bit. I'd go to their houses, and their mums would be quite normal, and their dads would, drive a Ford and would go to the office. And in my house, there was hippies dancing around with no clothes on, screaming under the moon. So I often didn't want to bring friends into my environment because I was quite embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
Now I think it's fabulous.
Yeah.
But I would go to normal people's homes, and they wouldn't talk of this stuff. They wouldn't.
No.
If a broom fell over, be like, "Oh my God, a message is coming!" Or if there was a crow on the outside, mum would be freaking out because it meant death. That didn't happen at other people's houses.
So, how much superstition then? Where do we separate the superstition from the reality of what we know is real? And I'm not. It's not a trick question. I'm just, you've just thrown it out there. Your mum would see a crow and think that. So how do we get to the actual real of what was happening, or was that real?
I don't know. I just know that mum's level of superstition seemed very sane to her.
Yeah.
So is that nature? I've probably developed those same things, but going back to the being close to nature, a lot of the superstitions were around sort of nature elements, animals, red sky at night, don't leave this and that out. So I think it was connected to some of the nature and earth stuff that was so prolific. But superstitions are a funny one, aren't they?
They are, and you could easily offend someone just by being green as grass and not respecting that these are important things to people. There's little villages around here, and I'm not even going to name any, but and the superstitions about eggshells, about hares, about pigs, and all sorts of things that if these things are seen, certain things don't happen that day. And I'm not saying that they're still practiced today, but I've read quite a lot of the folklore and the history of areas, and obviously these people, I won't say believed it, but they place. I wonder if when you actually get that ingrained in you, we can actually bring about this good or this bad. Do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Like, I'd be kept off school at weird days during the year if it was the first shoots of spring, and we wouldn't go to school, and it was superstition.
Yeah.
And things like, we always had certain plants at certain points in the house. There was always rosemary by the door for luck. There was always something. We always grew this. Everything in my childhood life had a meaning. Everything had a tangible superstition or a meaning that seemed, in my opinion, because I was ingrained in it, very normal. I do it to my poor kid now. Like, I have a very similar setup, and he rolls his eyes the way I rolled my eyes, but it's you live what you learn, right?
Yeah. And it's a vastly different world for him as well, isn't it? So for him to talk about that environment when he goes to school, it's absolutely black and white, I would have thought, because everybody's just head glued to phones and it's just crazy. So before we move away from childhood, am I right in thinking then that there was some kind of incident at age 13, family incident, or have I got that wrong?
Family incident. Yeah.
Did you say that people didn't want to talk about it? Maybe you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah. So, and I was thinking about this recently. I recall being in my aunt's kitchen, and it was the 90s, so they were probably having a couple of drinks and what have you, and they were all talking about this thing they'd seen in Liverpool. Because even though listeners might think I've got Scouse accent, I'm actually from the Wirral. I do live in Liverpool now, but I'm from the Wirral. So they'd gone over to Liverpool for a night out, hedonistic 90s. They'd gone to, rave at large, and several of them had reported seeing a a craft, like a US saucer, swooped down, but time stood still, and this was me earwigging, and the craft whooshed away, and it freaked them all out because the time, like watches had stopped, they'd lost a bit of time, and they were all talking about it like, that's a bit mad, that's a bit weird. And then it never got spoken about again. It was like a dirty secret. No one wanted to bring it up. And I kind of always like had that, like, that's so weird. Like, we're a really open family. Like, you were dancing around naked under the moon last week. Why are we not talking about this?
That's exactly what I was going to say when you'd finished, but you've said it for me. For people, and meaning your family and your friends, your mum and your parents' friends, who were so involved and tied to the earth and almost spiritual in nature, and then you've seen something like that, and it absolutely closes them down.
It shut them down, and I kind of forgot about it till quite recently, because a fellow witch and love of my life, she's an aunt, we'll call her an aunt. I had many aunts growing up. She tagged me in Facebook on a Facebook post about this incident that happened in the late 90s. And I was like, oh my God. And unfortunately, my mum's not here for me to ask. Well, there's ways of asking.
You're actually coming out with, you're coming out with answers to questions. I was going to say, did you ever ask your mum about this? So
I can't remember if I'd asked, later in life as I was getting into the research, but I did ask my actual blood auntie, and, we're not that close. And I said, do you remember that UFO thing? And she was like, no, don't know what you're talking about. But then my other aunt tagged me in a post in our local gazette about it. So I felt vindicated. But then I thought, that was weird. And I think maybe it was just a bit too weird. Even though we did weird stuff, it was just too out there to believe there'd be a saucer flying around Liverpool,
What year would that be then, Holly?
Oh, I'd have to check. Ish. Oh, God, I'm going to show you how old I am now. I would think 96. 98, 99.
98, 99. I mean, seriously, it'd be something, if I were you, I'd want to look into to see whether the other people in the local papers, there were reports of strange things, and you might be able to look for more witnesses. And I know that you've got loads to do in your life and lots of other projects, but I find that fascinating that a family like yours closed down on something like that. So it tells you something profound probably did happen.
The fact that when I text my blood aunt and she just went, don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. And then another one to be like, oh, and tagged me in it. I thought you'd, because I must have spoken about it at something, and gone, do you remember that UFO thing you're all web funny about? But yeah, it is strange. Very, very strange.
So many people do it. I got a reliable report of a huge triangle at Flamborough, between near the Links Golf Course, between Flamborough and Sowerby. And the guy who told me we're in a minibus with a group of other men. I'm not going to say other men because they were going to a rugby match, and they're either coming from it or going to it. So I spoke to the other party, the other people. They know nothing. They know nothing about it. They do. Wow. I know they do. But that's a similar thing that, and that's their right. They don't have to talk about it, do they? But there's so many people, it closes a person down. And it's strange. It must have been quite a big thing in their lives for somebody as open and as sort of not skeptical.
I've not really sat and thought on it that much, but now as we're unpacking it, it is a bit weird.
Yeah. So
maybe let's want to pick up.
Let's jump then to, if you want, CE5.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something I know next to nothing about. I mean, we could be practicing when Linny and Pete and Bob, we get up onto them cliff tops, and there's loads of people come now, and we might be inadvertently doing this, but we don't know. So educate the uneducated. Take as long as you like.
So for how I sort of stumble, and I don't know what happens with me and this topic and community. I seem to just stumble into different areas and then I'm there. So brought up the way I was, we were really big into meditation and consciousness. That was a theme throughout my life. I meditate every day, and I've spent a bit of time with the Monroe Institute. I read a lot on consciousness. It's just something that's part of my fabric of my being. And I think it was just a sort of lockdown hit in the UK. We were all at home. I'm not a big drinker, so I was running out of things to do. There's only so much banana bread I could bake. And I'd gone on to Amazon or something, and there was something about UFOs. Great. Love UFOs. Watched it, and it was a Dr. Stephen Greer documentary around C5 and contact. And I was like, but how he did it was through using consciousness, through meditation and protocols. So I was like, hang about. I'm obsessed with UFOs, as we were calling them then. I'm really obsessive about consciousness. Meditation's my jam. And you can squish all that together and you can make contact. Hell yeah. Sign me up. So lockdown hit. I had a lot of time on my hands. I downloaded the CE5 app after, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, excuse me. Downloaded the app, and there was a section on it that said, like people in your area. I was like, oh, there's going to be people like me in Liverpool and we can connect. Great. Clicked on it. And much to my sadness, there was nobody. I'm a marketeer. I was a publicist for a long time. I'm very good with social media and digital media. But well, I'll just check on the old Facebook. Went on Facebook, typed in C5 UK. Bing! There was this community. Joined, and there was these people talking and doing it and C5ing, and oh my God, I found my people. And somehow, I think, because I'm quite bold, I think I posted like, hi, I'm based in Liverpool. Is there anyone out there? Like, I'd love to talk to you about this stuff, because I'm an experiencer. I don't know who to talk to about it. And then the guy, James, who facilitates C5 UK, I think messaged me and said, and I'm just like paraphrasing now, I can't remember bit by bit. I think he sort of said, well, we don't have anyone who looks after the Northwest C5 group. Would you be interested? And, I've been in PR, I've managed big events all over the world. I'm quite a people person for the most part outwardly. I was like, yeah, go on. Cool. Got nothing else to do. I'm on furlough. So then I became the admin of the C5 Northwest page. And then that's where I met, friends that we know. And we started getting together through Zoom, and just kind of like, I didn't know if the murderers or like they were going to kill me. Like, none of us knew each other, but we got together on some Zooms and we just started conversing. And slowly, I think some of us just started to fall in love with each other, because we're very good friends to this day. And we organised to go out into the field and do CE5. So what is CE5?
Yeah, please tell us.
CE5 is using a protocol, a methodology through consciousness and meditation to, in layman's terms, to beam your location and your intent into the cosmos to the others, to encourage them that we are there peacefully and we would like to make contact, however that contact may be. So that's kind of C5 in a small nutshell. And what tends to happen, and I'm not like the authority on C5, but what in my humble experience, what happens is a group gets together with the same intent. We want to make peaceful contact, and that group becomes friendly. You then, well, there's two ways you can kind of go about it. People then go into the field work, it's called, gather in a circle and meditate. And the meditation Dr. Stephen Greer provides through his app, or they're on YouTube. And it's about, grounding yourself and putting your intentions and really beaming into the cosmos or into the universe that we're here in this location and we would like to make contact. And that beaming into the cosmos is called CTS, coherent thought sequencing. Layman's terms, it's like sending a beam up into the galaxy, into the universe, and saying, we're here, we're in Doncaster on a hill, come say hi. And that's just me putting, a Holly spin on it. So the Northwest group, we gathered. We'd met a few times on Zoom. I think there was like 26 of us or something. Excuse me. And we gathered, we sat in a circle, we played the meditations, and then there's several tones available on Greer's app, and those tones are said to encourage or stimulate them, the others, to come and make contact with us. And so that's kind of in a nutshell what C5 is. I hope I haven't butchered it.
No.
But I practice something more around HICE now, human initiated contact events or experiences, and it's just a nuance, bit different. But when we got together, I met the most incredible people who you could talk about non-human intelligence, who you could talk about UFOs, you could talk about abductions, you could talk about the things that most people either one, aren't aware of, two, scares the living bejesus out of them, or three, don't want to know. So we got together and we held our first C5 event, complete strangers in the middle of nowhere, looks a bit nuts, and we had a really interesting time, and we actually captured something on film.
So, well, you're going to have to tell us about it and tell us about the experience. I also want to know if there's a certain, your group, the HICE, Human Initiated Contact, did you say?
So HICE is a phrase that was formed by a wonderful, wonderful man called Dr. Joseph Burks, who I've had the pleasure of interviewing before and have a correspondence relationship with now. He's out in America. He was actually part of Dr. Stephen Greer's original team. So he would go out with Greer and do C5 and make contact. And he split off for his own reasons. And so he practiced something called HICE. Well, the nuance is it's just not branded Greer's version, really. So HICE for me is just a bit more open to the use of several contact modalities. So I don't want to get too technical for people. I'm trying to keep it dead layman's. C5 is a contact modality. But then you've got many others. The indigenous peoples of the Americas have their own contact modalities. The tribes in the Amazon would have a contact modality. The Aborigines in Australia, they have a contact modality.
And this is just normal to these
Very
other
normal.
indigenous.
And then you have, in South America, you have Mission Rama. Again, I'm trained in that contact modality as well. That's another contact modality. So, C5 is sort of Dr. Stephen Greer's brand of contact modality. But with HICE, those of us that practice it, we pull from many different types of modalities, but with the same intent.
It's much like the subject, like we've been saying, everything's linked. And no disrespect to Dr. Greer, but that's in a box. But I'm saying that, you're not saying that. That sounds like it's segregated, and you're touching on all of these contact modalities to try and initiate contact.
For sure,
what's the contacts there?
And to be fair, I'm just not a fan of it being significantly monetized.
I'm glad you said that, because I knew I actually knew that's where you were going with that, because that's what I was going to say. Is we shouldn't have to pay for this, should we? You know, people have said to me when I go on the cliff tops, you know, you could make money, because I get people wanting to take them for a guided tour and do this and that, and they're willing to pay. And I've never asked for money. I never would. And if I'm available, I'll meet people. And yeah, I agree. I think if you're doing something and putting the hours in, then a little bit of reward would be nice. But I'm not asking for it, by the way, because when I get up on them cliff tops, I don't ask for nothing from nobody. But certain elements see it as a business. Yeah, and then we kind of lose that earthbound tie. Maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say this because you know, because you feel like you'd be offending some people, because some people say, well, you know, if you go to work and you work 8 hours a day, then you want a wage.
I get it, Paul. I do get it, and you know, we'll come on to it. I have my own business within this community now, you know, and it is a business, and it is for profit. You know, I don't work for free, but I think standing in a field, being at one with the earth, putting your consciousness into the stars, for me, how could you? I don't see the exchange there, because you could go and do that by yourself.
So do we know then? And this is no personal about Stephen Greer. Do we know how he came to this model? Did somebody explain it to him, and then he decided he was going to work on it? Do we know?
No, I think I would definitely recommend viewers and listeners to check his films out, where he actually delves into that. But he was very big into meditation, a certain type of meditation, and by using that level of meditation, I believe that's when he had his first not his first, but that's when a contact experience happened, and then that's where he kind of went, aha, you know, having a protocol and a meditation equals X. But I would just encourage anyone, you know, if they wanted to understand it, he's the authority on that. Go watch his films, and you know, if people wanted to know more about HICE, you know, look into Dr. Joseph Bergs, look into the work of Ray Hernandez, and you know, making communion or contact with the others. It's an individual practice. Mission Rama, led by Sixo-Pax, I was getting his name wrong, Sixo-Pax Wells, but I got that wrong. You know, it's all about contact modalities, and you know, I believe that's for all. I don't think that should be monetized personally, but other people may. But for me, I'm just not comfortable with saying, give us 20 quid to stand in a field. You can go stand in a field by yourself, like it's fine.
Yeah. And you know? And do you find then, Holly, that let's concentrate on the group that go out with you. Is there a certain mindset, a certain type of individual that seeks this out, or have you got all different personalities? Yeah, but have they all got the same intention? I guess that's where I'm going.
I would say that you know, there's a core group of us and I don't like saying my group because I'm not the owner, but in the group I help facilitate, different personalities, different walks of life, different wants and nuances and norms and conventions, different occupations, different accents, different upbringings. But certainly for my special people, our core group, I think of the thread that unites us is we know there's more.
Yeah.
And we know there's something out there that we can taste, but we can't fully grasp. And we're curious. We're curious to communion with the could be or the what if. And it's that curiosity that I think, you know, threads is tied this beautiful golden thread around us. And we've become really, really good friends. And I would consider these people like, you know, if friends, they're my friends.
Yeah. And does it have an age barrier?
No.
You know, do you find that people in the 60s, 50s, 30s, is it attracting all generations? That's
all generations. You know, we've had MPs, politicians, solicitors, doctors, former military, you name it, we've encountered it. Some people drift in, some people drift out.
Yeah.
And there's never like, if you've not been, you can't come. You know, the one thing that I am insistent upon, I don't want to get murdered by strangers in a field. not really
so
my bag.
you need to vet the people and get to
You
know
just
them
need to
first.
get to know.
Yeah.
And I've taken some heat in the past. People have contacted us and wanted to come out with us, and as part of C5 or HICE, having a coherent, healthy group that trusts each other, it's really important, because Paul, we don't know what it is. We don't know if they're tricking us. We don't know if they're evil. We don't know.
Yeah.
And I've took heat in the past by saying, if you can't jump on a Zoom or give us a call and just let us scope you out a bit, you can't come, because I don't know if you're like bonkers or going to chop my head off.
It makes good sense.
We have to be safe. We have to be like healthy, like we're stood in a field in the middle of nowhere. Like anything can go on. And trust me, when we did the event where we had the energy and it morphed into a human face.
Well, that's where we were going. I was going to say, let's hear about some of these experiences, please. Yeah.
So we were in.
Just one sec, Holly. I don't want to bring Les in if there's no questions, because we could start that afterwards. But this might take 5 or 10 minutes. So if Les is happy to wait for it, just put your thumbs up, Les, because I can see you. Yeah. Let's do the experience then, Holly. Sorry for putting in.
So we'd gone to a place in Wigan, and we'd headed up there, and we had paranormal investigators with us. We had young people, middle-aged people, older people, a whole plethora. And up we went with our camp chairs and our blankies, and we went to go. We were dead excited because we got to like meet each other properly, and the energy was high. And we went up. We sat in a circle, we did the protocols, we played the tunes, we did the meditation, and you could feel a buzz. You could feel there was like an energy amongst these strangers. And so we were doing it a little, and then the starts to get a bit dark. And funnily enough, and I don't know if because some of the group are in the chat now, as we'd come out of the meditation, I seen something like an upside down, like the shape of a cupcake. It was upside down, but like a weird pewter grey colour. And I seen it whiz past, and I thought, oh, of course, people are going to think the girl that set this up has seen something immediately. So it was a bit like, I don't know whether I should say, and I think I probably might have said it to a couple, like, I think I've just seen something. So the excitement and the energy was building. So it starts to get a bit darker. And one of our friends, who's really into the topic, really into the paranormal, she'd brought cameras and bits and bobs with her. I'd just gone up there with a torch, hoping for the best. So she's snapping away, and as she snaps away, she's like, guys, and she captured an energy squash that had sort of morphed into a human face. So we're like, what the blazers? So I'm an Aquarius, fairly logical. I thought, it's a plastic bag in the trees. Gotta be. Plastic bag. No, absolutely not. So me, brave Billy, just starts going off into the trees to look for this plastic bag, thinking, no. But if memory serves me right, I think as I'd gone into the trees, I think with I think it was one of the lads had come behind me. It moved. So we were like, oh, something's here. So we captured it. And it was just weird for us all, because although one of my friends was with us and she's a medium, she said none of us saw it with our naked eye, which was the most weirdest thing. But Lucy, my friend, who's medium, she sensed it. She said there's something there. And then Natalie, our friend, had captured it. And I think one of the girls might have just sent you the picture of it. So it might be on your mobile. I don't know. She just said in the chat. But it looked like a human face, and it just felt like, is it trying to show us? And other pictures were taken around at the same time from different angles. Nothing else was picked up.
Yeah.
So it was an anomaly that was picked up there and then at the point of us communion with the heavens. And it was just mad.
Did you feel any kind of static electricity or anything like that?
The camera I think one of the camera batteries drained. Something.
Right.
One something. Yeah, one of the camera batteries drained
thanks,
or something.
Wendy. Wendy, if you're expecting me to somehow produce that picture, me and technology, I'll look at it and thank you. You should have sent it to Les or sent it to, I don't know, or Jess. I just first person to hold my hand up, and myself and technology, I'm just useless.
One of the girls, Paul, has just said, and it evaded me. It was actually Midsummer's Eve as well.
Right.
So in the Wiccan calendar, in the pagan calendar, that's when the earth energies and the energy of our planet are real high. So like all the stars kind of aligned that night, but it was like I walked away from it meeting these mates and like, this CE5 thing works.
So, were you all on a high?
We just was so buzzy. Like things changed for me. That was like, looking back now, I think if that hadn't happened, even though I've, interfaced with these orange orbs, suns, or a lot of my life, it was like, right, it was from that moment that I got heavily into this topic. And I'm sure the girls will back that up from, some mum from Liverpool who had a unhealthy interest in ufology and what it was. From that moment, that's when things went, it just soared for me. And, I find myself in the most wildest predicaments now that, there's some things I can't even talk about. It's that wild. So that was a pivotal moment for me.
Just briefly jump back to the orange orbs. They fascinate me. That's what I spend a lot of time on them cliff tops for. How big were they that you saw in childhood when you're in the eye of this horse?
Like
for people that haven't listened,
just like
baseball.
No, they were like beach ball size. But I tell you something else. And you'll remember when I had my horrific leg accident.
I do.
I was in the I believe these orbs come to me for an intelligent reason. And I'm not sure what that reason is, but I now feel that it's going to sound nuts. And I'm aware of what I'm about to say.
Yeah.
I feel whatever that intelligence is or what they are, this is where it sounds a bit, they've been checking in with me throughout my life for a purpose. And when I was in hospital and I was told I might not walk again, they couldn't find the right surgeon for me. I was on a high dependent unit. It was my mental health had plummeted. I hadn't seen my family properly. I was, I'm just setting it up so listeners and viewers can understand why it's so moving to me and why I think they've got an interest in me. My mental health was really bad. I actually considered not being here anymore.
Yeah.
And it was that evening, the healthcare assistant came in and I was having some dark thoughts. And I said, I just want to see the stars. Can I have my bed turned around? And because the hospital was in Oswestry Street, it was quite rural where we were. There's lots of fields, no roads at the back. Can you turn my bed? I just want to see the stars because I've been obsessed with constellations forever. And the most incredible thing happened. I'm not wanting to be on the planet anymore. I'm done. I don't know what's going to happen with my life. I look out the window just for solace in the heavens, bink, bink, bink.
Yeah.
Orange orbs appeared. And it was at that moment, again, another pivotal moment with the phenomena, that it changed for me. I felt a sense of, they're here again. There's more. There's more. I'm not just going to sit here with a broken leg feeling sorry for myself. I'm meant to do something with this. And it was like, and I know it sounds balmy, but it was like, come on, girl. Come on. Keep going. Like, you're here for a reason. And I know that sounds egotistical, and I get that, and I'm aware of what I'm saying. But why did they appear to me at that moment?
Yeah. Well, I can't answer that. And in your heart and in your inner self, that's what you feel. And I'm in no position to say that that's not the truth. Be as detailed or not as detailed as you want with this, because you've just talked about the injury. I met you several times after you'd had this injury. Just for listeners who maybe think that you've over dramatized that, because we can end it right now. And when I just say it was a horrific injury, and it was, wasn't it? You know,
it was awful. It was awful.
Yeah.
I'm still, I still have to take painkillers every day, which is crap. I'm a bit clumsy, and I fell over at a family farm. Really, really freak accident. I fell out of a flip flop.
Sure, sorry for laughing.
I fell out of a flip flop and caused significant damage to my right leg. So I broke my fibula and tibia in multiple places. I broke my ankle in multiple places. And they didn't quite know how to put it back together. So I was in hospital for 6 weeks. I had to relearn how to walk. I had a big metal frame drilled into my legs that we had to use a spanner to crank the bones back together every single night. So it wasn't just a little accident. It was, and I still limp to this day. I'll never walk again properly, but I'm still here.
Yeah, well, Ollie, thanks for sharing that bit. But I think it was important because you were talking about the orbs and you were saying the injury, and I was lucky enough to know you and know what you were going through then. So I think that people should know that, in case anybody thought, well, I'm making this sound a bit dramatic. It was a horrific injury. So we could probably, if there's any questions, go to Les. I don't know if Jess has relayed any through. If that's okay with you, Holly. Yeah, that's and more questions, please, in capital letters from our audience.
Yeah, so we've got plenty of questions in tonight, and thanks, Jess, for sending those over to me. Now, on the first note, before I put this question on the screen, Holly, I want you to remember one thing, that you're on Paul Sinclair's Truth Proof live stream tonight. So here's the question. Lee Roscoe is asking, what was the best speaker at the minute on last weekend?
Me.
A nice reply. Yeah, that's good enough.
That's good enough, Holly, for us. Yeah. So
I couldn't choose, so I'll just go with me.
Brilliant.
Yeah, sounds perfect.
They were all wonderful.
Answer.
Everyone was so wonderful. I learned so much, and how lucky were we to get such great people in one room together.
I enjoyed. The alt speakers know that Paul Sinclair's got the attention span of a fly. But I had a little listen to them all. But I enjoyed Nathaniel Gillis. And, I really did, because he brought an alternative viewpoint to the subject. Brilliant.
For sure. Yeah. I'm going to keep in touch with him, for sure.
Yeah.
So Lee Roscoe has got another, not so much a question. Oh, sorry. Yorkshire Grey is asking, the occult and ritual practice is all linked, in my opinion. It's very much part of the phenomena.
Absolutely. Well, and Nathaniel talked about this, didn't he, at Awakening? CA5 could be called a ritual. You going up onto Bempton and gathering friends and doing what you do could be called a ritual. It's ritualistic in nature. When you go to church, that's ritualistic. So, of course, they're linked. It's just we've, through whatever this 75 plus year mockery and cover up that we've just had labels placed on things to keep us categorized and keep us divided. And I think now through, events like Awakening, through social media, events that we put on and what have you, the different communities are starting to speak. And we're now more people are going, that makes sense,
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Holly. Lenny is asking Jess, question for Holly. Did you ever visit Rudston? And if so, any thoughts, Holly?
Rudston
Monolith, yeah.
I'll just give a brief outline of it in case you don't know. It's close to us, so I'm probably not been. It's the Rudston Monolith, the tallest standing stone in Great Britain.
Yeah, we've been there. Mummy, I've got a sneaky suspicion that we used to go there for Beltane. which is
It's
May
a
the
side of a
1st.
church. The monolith at the side of a church.
It does sound familiar, but you've got to imagine.
Yeah.
I've been dragged from Callanish down to Cornwall, so
Yeah.
but it does sound familiar. It does. Is there a natural spring near it?
There is. That's called the Gypsy Race.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. And have you got any thoughts on when you visited, Holly?
My thoughts are I probably need to revisit it because I'm probably
when you
25
get up
years
this
since
way,
I last went.
Well, when you get up this way, if we
Yeah.
meet up, I'll take you to it. Well,
Oh,
it'll be
fabulous.
amazing.
We'll take you for a tour around, Ollie. Yeah. And we'll
Love
walk
it.
charge. Oh, we definitely walk charge. Yeah.
I might, but I'll charge you
You
knowledge and
might,
a cup
yeah.
of tea.
A cup of tea is good enough. All good.
All right, then. I've got a question. Thanks for that, Holly. And a question from the Revenant. Holly, I used to live in Liverpool and I experienced so many negative paranormal activity around Titchfield and Hague Street. Is there any part of Liverpool you found off the chart with activity? Great question,
Oh,
Red.
absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I'm very lucky that I live in one of the more sort of older parts. I live in South Liverpool, and we have a lot of activity here. I'll tell you a quick anecdote because I think it plays to the question.
Take as long as you like.
So I sleep with the window open because I always have to. I like to feel the wind, of course, naturally. And I used to hear a train all the time at like 2 a.m. I only sleep 4 hours a night, so I'm generally up at weird times. And because I do a lot of work in the States with this, I have to be awake. Anyway, and I always hear this train. Didn't think anything of it. And one night we were sat in our garden having a little drink with the neighbours, and she said, you know, the ghost train. And I was like, whoa. And she was like, apparently there's a train that goes past and makes a woo-woo noise. And we haven't even got any train stations near us. And I was like, what? And so I'd been hearing, and so where I live, there is an old railway that's been disused for many,
Right.
20 years, 30 years perhaps. But it just didn't twig to me that there isn't a train station because I didn't grow up here. So I didn't know if there was a train station or not, really. And I used to hear that train woo-woo quite frequently. So I've been listening to a ghost train for many years. But Liverpool is so ancient. You've got the Georgian Quarter. We have a tale. What's his name? Jumping Jack.
Spring Hill Jack.
Jumping.
Spring Hill Jack.
And the creature that steals babies and jumps from rooftops. There's a lot of superstition about him here. And also, Tom Selman wrote about it, a Liverpool author. And I'd encourage anyone to check it out if they fancied a day out. On Bold Street, a very famous street in Liverpool, it's a bit arty-farty. There's Central Train Station underneath, but Liverpool's built on a bed of quartz in sandstone, which is electromagnetically charged. Yeah. And apparently there's a time warp or a time loop on Bold Street where people walk into it and all of a sudden they're in Victorian Liverpool and the horse and carts and the all of it chimney, and they walk through it like, what the heck's going on, and depart from the side. And the school of thought is it's the train's electricity doing something with the quartz creates a time dilution. So yeah, Liverpool's super spooky.
Fascinating though that it can take them back to that location. Not that they're in that location, but back to it reenacts everything. It's almost like a tracing, the stepping back in time. Burton Fleming here in UK, close to us. What am I talking about here in UK? Close to us. Lady talked about taking us children to school and driving along the road through Burton Fleming, and then suddenly the car's all bumping, and she's just on a dirt track, and she sees a wooden sign, and then she just runs out of it. It's similar things. It's there's got to be more. There's got to be everywhere in UK, everywhere in the world. These things, these anomalies.
So the question from Mark Jones is marketing compatible with Wiccan ways? Wiccan being nature and cycles of life, marketing selling things to people that people do not really need.
Well, I completely and utterly disagree with that. So in life, we make what's compatible to our own nuances and our own norms and conventions. I have the pleasure of watching things grow and develop and build. So that really goes hand in hand with my nurturing side of more of my perhaps pagan ways. But, you know, walking two paths in life is not uncommon. And if I could do this as my day job, which, we'll come to that shortly, I'm sure, I would. But unfortunately, Mama's got to pay that mortgage. We can't pay the mortgage on spells.
No.
Okay,
Good
thanks
point.
for that, Polly. Yeah, I've got a question from Outer Limits magazine. And question for Holly, were your parents practicing mysticism as witches at all, or was it a belief in ESP or parapsychology they had?
So it was just my mum. I didn't grow up with my dad. She was practicing. So she encompassed, nothing was off the table. You know, we would, all denominations, I don't know if that's the right word, all kind of elements of the supernatural, the extraordinary, occultism, all of that stuff. She just practiced. I only recently found out actually that I read some, because my mum kept journals every day. So I've literally got tons of books of her magical training, which is phenomenal. I only recently found out there was all like dots and numbers and weird things, like a code. And I didn't know what that code was. And I've just found out it's I Ching, which is mysticism from China. So she was dabbling in all kinds of stuff. And, I was grateful that I got to learn from her.
And have you been able to decipher any of that then?
My very, 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 very good friend knows of it and sent me a lovely book for my birthday. So it's still a bit too painful for me to go through.
Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
When the time's right. But I didn't know what it was really. I thought, how the hell is a woman from Birkenhead learn Chinese mysticism? But she did.
Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating. Thanks for that, Holly. And Alex Thompson, evening, Holly. What are your thoughts on tarot and tarot readings?
Would you like one?
Nah.
Alex probably would. Alex probably would.
I think, tarot is open to interpretation, but I grew up reading tarot cards, so I will consult the cards. I think with me, is it nature or nurture? I don't know. I just don't know. Because my nan, even though she was Catholic, she had a knowing. So she always knew. She'd always know when the priest was about to call. She'd always know if someone was going to come to the house. She always had like an extra sense. And most of the women in my family have that extra something. So tarot has just been, how some kids play Snap. We played tarot.
So once again, then, using the cards, we're not calling it a trickster element, but we're talking about interpreting what those cards are telling you. Do you think do you think when you turn the card over, surely it's not that's luck of the, in my opinion, shoot me down, that's luck of the draw when you turn the card over, but then you interpret the message. Do you think that's the phenomena giving you the message?
No, I think we humans are connected to, I'll stop. I think we're connected to an information highway that's not grounded here. I think through our consciousness or parts of our brains that we don't fully understand is a conduit to other information, which if you look at some of the work, Gary Nolan of the Soul Foundation, and of course Stanford in America, when he was tasked with looking at the brains of the military personnel that had contact with craft, they all had enlarged basal ganglia. I'm no neuroscience, so I'm probably butchering the life out of this, so sorry. And it's my understanding that in the basal ganglia is kind of where we're responsible for intuition.
Okay.
And that intuition picks up on information. Like, when you walk into a room.
Oh, well, coincidence. Yeah, this was going to be a question I'll ask you about coincidence. But yeah, we can do that one in a moment then. Yeah.
But I think we have the capacity and capability to connect through I can never say it right, the Ashik records. We're connected to more. We are, as Bob, Robert Monroe from the Mormon Institute says, we are more than our physical bodies. But I think we've lost that ability to connect to that. And we've lost that ability through, many different ways. But it's interesting how people who are connected to craft or the phenomena have that bit in their brain as well. So I think I think we're all connected in a way we don't understand, but I don't think it's, in answer to your question, I'm not so sure it's the phenomena interacting with cards. I think we're just accessing through interpretation information from a source.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, and you kind of touched on this earlier about your mother with superstitions and the like. So Yorkshire Grey 73. What protocol does Holly carry over from her childhood?
God, I don't know where to start. We have plants are in certain positions around the house. There's certain things I wouldn't eat on certain days. If there's a murder of crows, I'll wait for the phone to ring because I know bad news is coming. If candles are placed in a certain way and they go this way, it's my whole life's got this thread through it that it's quite hard for me to actually verbalize it, because it's just, and I'd never pass anyone on the stairs. The way I put cutlery out, if we're having guests over, I would do certain things. My house has got a ring of salt round it. I've got a crystal grid under each of every bed in the house. I could go on and on and on.
Yeah.
We'd be here all night.
Yeah. So a lot, in answer to Gray's question, a lot of it's carried through from childhood. Yeah.
I think, and I think this question's kind of a general question, probably not specifically for you, Holly, but you might have a thought on it. Now, Jill Spate is asking, anyone familiar with Barnsley remember the Pentangle shop?
I don't, Nige, but I know where Barnsley is. I've worked there, but I don't. No, I'm not familiar with it.
No,
Perhaps
I don't know it.
Somebody's going to tell us, or Nige, you can tell us at some point. Please do.
Send us
Pentangle. It sounds like it's going to be a bit mysticism and what have you. So
okay,
all the good stuff.
Yeah. Tony D. Do you think a lot of other people? Do you think the phenomenon is connected to all of paranormal? Is it possible that the phenomena is us and we are connected on a quantum level? It goes back to what you were saying earlier, Holly, doesn't it?
It does, and it's an interesting one. Dr. Mike P. Masters, fabulous guy, check him out. He talks about the others being possibly us from the future, and we've all connected quantumly. And I'm not fully versed on quantum mechanics, and yet I am actually studying because I haven't got enough to do. I am actually studying physics at the minute as well, because I really want to understand what this whole quantum lark is about. But the phenomena could be us. Nothing's off the table, because we ultimately don't know what we are dealing with.
I don't know whether Tony meant it like that, and he possibly did. How I interpreted it is when he says, is it us? Are we actually manifesting what we're putting into it? And there's nothing out there. I'm not saying that. Do you know, there's nothing out there. Hence, UFO researchers see UFOs and ghost hunters see ghosts. So, is the human mind so powerful that we can create these things, Toplas and
we could.
I don't know. It's a good question, Tony. It's kind of made me think.
It's made me think.
I don't think much.
I actually now, and this is where I get controversial. My current belief, and current because it changes, I'm not so certain that they're coming from another star system.
Spot on.
I think they're here.
Yeah.
And they've been here before us. we're passing through, humanity's just passing through. And I think they're just a step outside of what our reality, what we can see. And they slip in and out because they're more advanced than us. So they're able to play and dip in and out. And I think I don't think good and bad, the way humans view good and bad. I don't think there's good ones and there's bad ones. I think that's a human contradict. We've made good and bad. But I don't know. But are we, man? I don't know. That's why we research, eh?
We're stood on that stage at the Awakening, and not just this time, but last time as well. And I said, when we talk about people want to say ET, I just say that loosely. I prefer to call them unknown others, because let's stop enabling science and academia to put the wall up in front of people that say that these things we're having these experiences and these things are interacting with us because they can't possibly traverse the vast distances of space. They're already here. I bet everybody in the chat, unless there's some really ardent, skeptically minded people who've come in just to observe what we're talking about, most people in the chat will be looking for answers to little bits of their own puzzle, little bits of their own confusion, that's something that's happened to them, myself included. That's how I got involved in this.
Myself included.
So yeah, they're already here. I'm totally on the same page. I don't know where we are with questions, Les.
How many more do you want? I've got one from Kev.
If anybody's happy with questions, I mean, I'm quite happy to it's great. I love random things being thrown at us like this.
Kev Oyston then is asking, Hey Holly, do you think there is anything to the Ball Street Liverpool time slip stories? You've just talked about that, but if you just want to recap a little bit on that.
Hello, darling Kev.
You know Kev, don't you? Yeah,
I do know Kev.
He's visited us.
I do, because there's been so many tales about it, and yes, people embellish, yes, people add things on, but it's well, I just don't. I believe it just seems logical. Crystals, electricity, something that weird happens. So yeah, I think there's something to it. I believe.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And Wendy Rose has put that on the screen. When we all met, then Holly before COVID, then we waited.
We waited. And how long did you have to wait, Wendy? Perhaps Ollie's going to answer this to us.
Can't remember. I'm a neurodiverse person who doesn't understand time. I've got no concept of time. Can't wear a watch because they just break on me. So my view of time is not what everyone else's is, unfortunately.
Holly, you're not unusual there, because I can't wear a watch. Every watch stops.
Yeah, same.
Weird. I never even thought about that until you just mentioned it.
I don't wear one, but they don't stop on me.
Yeah.
Anybody have any bad experiences?
Not through sort of C5 or HICE, but I did have my quite startling experience last year, for sure.
Oh, right. We're going to get to that, aren't we? Yeah. I'll just see whether Les has got any more questions before. Yeah, I'm glad you reminded me.
The questions are coming in thick and fast all the time, but I might get this one on the screen. Madeline Wick. Hi, Ollie. How have your beliefs, views evolved from childhood in relation to parental influence? That's a good question.
Mum wasn't really into sort of like aliens or UFOs or anything. That's certainly been one that I picked up and ran with. My mum was very much of a certain type of practitioner, so she would never look into sort of Aleister Crowley or anything of that nature. She didn't really like to look at the darker side of paganism or Wicca or the unseen. Whereas, and this is not me professing to be into like dark stuff, just to preference that, but I think to make informed decisions you have to look at all sides of the coin. So my practices took me off in more exploration. I've spent time with the Rosicrucians. I've spent time with the female version of the Freemasons. I've gone off and looked at different areas of mystery schools and the occult. I've spent time with the OTO. I've spent time with lots of different types because I'm curious. Mum was quite steadfast in her arena, whereas I think for me, I wanted to see what made the world. So I learned different stuff, perhaps.
Okay.
A question from me then, Holly. How far back in time can you go back to your mother was a Wiccan, and how far do you go back in generations with this type of?
My family's. It's not something that was super discussed. So my nan would read your tea leaves, but that wasn't that's not magic. We're Catholics. So I believe there was this knowing through our female line that goes back, but I don't know.
Okay.
I suspect.
Yeah, and just at this point, then I'm just going to thank everybody who's donated monetary wise, and I'll give some shout outs. Madeline Wick, thank you very much for tonight's donation. Joe, Martin Abbas, and TA, all thank you very much, and welcomed to help us with the channel, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, all good. Thank
you. And I'll probably get some more in a little bit later, guys. So see you in a bit.
Yeah. Okay then. Let's jump then, Holly, to your own experience in not too distant past. Then.
Yeah, sure.
Please. Yeah.
So I'd embarked on a new area of meditation. I got really into Robert Monroe, the Monroe Institute, who are a wonderful organisation. And I've been very blessed to interview their UK trainer, Luigi Scarinella, and was invited to spend some time in their UK site. Anyway, they had something called the Gateway Tapes. I'd been doing the Gateway Tapes, and we'd be here all night for me trying to get into what that is. So I'd been doing a lot of serious meditation. Serious, like we're talking 6-7 hours at a time meditation, which is a lot for most people. So I was doing the Gateway Tapes. I was doing a lot of something called hemi-sync, where you sync the two parts of your brain. So I was doing that, and I was also doing my own sort of meditation. And kind of in the background to that, I was still solo communion with them in my own C5E HICE way. I was just trying to knit all my meditational practices together, perhaps. And I remember it being the afternoon and the boys were out. So I had the house, just me and the dog. And my home's very safe in terms of spiritually safe because, a bit of a witch, grounded, nothing bad happens here without me allowing it, right? So that, this is my safe space. And I remember it being afternoon and I was like, the boys are out. I'm going to go into a real deep one and just go off and explore the cosmos in my brain. And I remember being in meditation and then things changed rapidly. And I recall coming to, I recall the dog growling and I couldn't move. And I'm thinking, this is weird. This is strange. And then I started to get scared because I couldn't move. I'm thinking, is this a dream? But the dog was growling. Okay.
So,
and then I became aware of things around me. Things is the wrong word. I became aware of several presence of not people, of entities around me. And that's when I got scared.
In your home?
Like, in my home. And I'm thinking, okay, this is a really weird, horrible, scary dream. This is weird. But I knew it wasn't a dream because I was awake.
You're conscious of the dog growling.
I could hear the dog growling. And it felt, and the fear was palpable because I couldn't move. And I'm thinking, oh my God, there's men in the house. Something bad's got, what? I got frightened. But then then it became more unusual. I was aware of entities around me. My bed's in the middle of the room. I was aware around me, and then it felt like the fear had, the only way I can say it honestly or openly, it was like there was a recognition that I was really scared, and the fear was pulled away from me, because within a split second that panic had gone, but I was still in a frightening situation. I didn't know if these were robbers or murderers. This is otherworldly. Okay. I remember like talking to myself, going, "What is happening? What?" And I remember the distinctly saying, "What do they want with me? What do they want with me?" And it was a they.
But you'd been trying to communicate with something.
Exactly. So, and I'm going, well, what do they want with me? Because it sort of twigged in my head. I'd been doing all this C5ing. I'm talking about it all over the world. I've been in the Daily Mail talking about it. I'm talking about communion with the others. And now the others are in my bedroom. What? And then again, the fear, it kept being taken away. But then I felt feelings that weren't mine. And then, and this is where it gets weirder, words were put in my head.
You could hear them, or you just knew that these words?
I saw the words. I know that makes no sense. I saw the words, and they were just, it was like someone had gone plop, plop in my brain. And then as quick as it happened, it vanished. It all just stopped. And then I'm like, oh my God, I've got a psychiatric problem. So I've got, the first thing I thought is, I've woke up from a dream. I've lost the plot. I was just trying to rationalize the situation, but the dog was like going for it. And then I looked outside the window, and it was dark. I'd missed hours.
Right.
Out time. Sorry. Just it was the strangest thing to happen. And time, I remember feeling, it was like I'd been placed in like a bubble. Like I couldn't, the window, because it's always open, I couldn't feel the wind. When these things were there, it was like we were suspended in that moment in time. And I felt like they were there observing me. And I'm thinking, what did they want? I was aware it was a they. I was aware of this bluish hue. I was aware there was multiples of them. I became aware of feelings that were not mine. My own feelings, the fear kept being removed. It was like a consistent swiping away. And then these words, and then nothing.
Do you remember the words?
Some of them, yeah. There's a particular one that it's like, I'd rather not say, to be honest. I'm still looking into what they could mean.
That's fine, and don't go any further if you don't want to. But these others, were they on the peripheral? You didn't actually get to see them.
I saw the hue. It was like see this microphone. It was like,
you're aware of it, but
they were not people. So that's when I thought, I'm not getting murdered. There's not someone's drugged me and put chloroform on me or something. Because I thought of like every possible scenario that this could be. And I remember thinking, well, you asked for them. You've been messing with the phenomena for a long time. And what's really interesting, Paul, is again, pivotal moment. I believe that happened to me to put me on a trajectory where I'm going now.
Okay.
And I now believe that it wasn't to frighten me. It wasn't to scare me, because the fear kept being, it was like it was being taken out of me. Whatever it was, or they were, I don't think it wanted me to be frightened, but I believe it gives me goosebumps. I believed they'd come. It's like a level up from the orbs. It was like the orbs were like the scout party, and then the real deals turned up.
and not to pour any disrespect on the experience, but then in that way, some people would look at it and maybe say, we're being manipulated then.
Well, it did manipulate me because that experience, and you know, I'm sure the girls will attest to this. I didn't really do any C5 in for a while. I just
and
had
you
to
seem
take
uncomfortable
stock.
talking about it. Does it make you feel uncomfortable talking about it?
It makes me feel uncomfortable because it freaked me out. And I wish I hadn't have freaked out and embraced it. But I felt like they were, whatever it was aware that I wasn't ready for whatever that was. And I believe it will happen again.
Okay. So, and somebody who's not heavily into meditation, and I have tried, but when did it close down? When you started trying to analyze it? When you're there, you're in this meditative state, and this is happening. Did you start to try and analyze it, and it's kind of imploded and closed down, or did it just?
It went as quick as it came. But when I became aware of these entities, let's call them, I no longer felt in my meditative state. I'd crossed into another environment.
Okay.
But the environment was my home, was my bed, with my dog, in my house. I'd left the place of meditation I'd kind of come back, but when I'd come back to the right now and the present, they were here. And it was like suspended animation.
It sounds fascinating, but a little bit, a lot frightening, really, isn't it? Because you're not expecting it, but like you just said, you'd asked for it. Not asked for it, but you know what I mean? That you were in that meditative state, reaching out to the outer nowhere for some kind of sign, and you got it.
I got it. And it was pivotal.
Jumping away from that then, just got to conference. How did you feel then listening to so many people talking about the darker side of ufology? For those that don't know who are listening, and I'm sure that most people will, the conference were 2 weeks ago. It were in Bolton. Holly presented all the speakers, and the conference was about the darker side of ufology. So it's like opposite to what you're about, really. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely right. And I believe in synchronicities, and I believe the things happen for a reason. My views, people go back and listen to shows I've done 2 years ago, and, I'm all love and light, man. And it's, it's all peace. And actually now, I'm deeper into the topic. I've been exposed to more experiences. I felt it was important for me when I got the opportunity to host that conference. I felt it was a learning experience for me. And now I am not of the mindset that it is all peace, love and light. I think we are interacting with something that could have implications. And I move with caution now. And I believe that experience happened to me to, how your old dad will go, come on, get a grip. It was a bit like, your ego's got too big, Holly. You think you know it all. Well, we're going to show you something else. That's kind of what I took from it. Like, I was shown the other, there's I know this tiny weeny bit of it. And, I am, hearing what you guys spoke about was a learning for me. I've heard you speak before, and obviously I've read, and I have to take all of these testimonies and claims and evidence, and I have to pull out what works for me, and I'm just growing and evolving in that. But that moment was pivotal for me, for sure.
Yeah. And I suppose we're all evolving. I think that I said when I was speaking, these are my thoughts at the moment. And in a year's time, 2 years' time, something could happen, because we keep going down these dark corridors of learning, if that's the word, and then we find something else out. And it's all, I do think that it's that whatever it is, there's a massive trick. it might not be. I say a trickster element, as though it's something in human terms. But that's the way we perceive it. But it's leading us somewhere to for its own agenda, and I don't understand why. But to me, I think in view of what happened to me during childhood, I don't see anything good in the phenomena, and that's how I feel about it. Or all of it. I just think that. And when Vitaly and Steve came up with concept, the darker side, I just knew that this is for me. This not because I want to be in the darker side of it. It's just anything that will take a child, and I'm repeating myself over and over, from its bed, or anybody, the dead of night, and subject them to absolute fear. Is not doing it for the good of mankind.
Course. And these experiences have compounded and spurred me on to the projects I'm involved with now. I do want to investigate the unknown.
So some of the projects then, I hope I'm going to pronounce this right. Tell us about John. Is it Ramirez?
Ramirez.
So
I'm involved in lots of projects, and what was quite interesting, at the start of my sort of podcast and show journey, John Ramirez, a former CIA guy, a lot of people will probably recognize the name, big into the UAP topic. Did the circuit of podcasts and shows. He decided to give his last ever interview to me from the UK, a complete unknown. No one knew who I was at all at that stage. And he gave his last interview to me before disclosure happens. And this guy had been on the circuit for years. You can watch him on all kinds. And he decided this girl from the north of England that didn't have a platform. I think at that moment I probably had about 6,000 followers on Twitter. And he chose me, which I still don't quite understand. But he, that show, him doing that with me, cameras go, spared me on to so many more projects and opened up a community to me, and I found my voice within that community. But John, made some claims during that show that we did that people just were like, oh my goodness. He talked about reptilians. He talked about disclosure, about an event and what was going to come. And it was the start of an interesting journey for me, for sure.
So what, you touched on the word reptilians. What are your views on the various types of beings that people describe? And have you got any stories or people spoken to people who've had experiences of these types of entities?
The whole reptilian thing scares the bejesus out of me. Absolutely terrifies me. And I've always got a bit around that. I've had so many different tales and claims from so many different people about the visitors and what they look like and who they are. But again, I think some of it is the trickster element as well. If we want to frighten you, we're going to appear as a very, and I don't, for me personally, I'm just not that educated on the mantids and the reptilians and the Nordics and the greys. But, there's something that's presenting in a certain way for a reason. Again, are they messing with us? For what purpose? Is there several different races and breeds and creeds of NHI? I don't know. But the reptilian thing scares the life out of me.
Well, just jumping away from it, staying with it, but jumping away from it. If anybody in chat or anybody has any experience of the reptilian phenomena, if that's what we're going to call it, we'd love to speak to you, because it's something we've not touched on. I know years ago, Chris Turner, who's a good friend of ours and Truth Proof, interviewed David Icke, and he's heavily into the reptilian, not into the reptilians, but speaks about them.
He talks to them.
So yeah, it'd be brilliant to touch on that, because it's a terrifying thing. You know, I have a friend who was at the conference who told me about his brother who lives in New Zealand. Just briefly touch on this. And this particular day, and I've got to exchange emails with this guy and speak to him. He'd seen a UFO, or he believed he had, and took a picture at the side of a mountain. And not into UFOs or anything, but he'd got this strange object. Then that night, and he lived alone, he went to bed. Tall guy, we're talking like over 6'2", in a double bed on his own. Gets up in the night. I've not got information in front of me, and we'll probably do this as one of our little shorts for YouTube. Yeah, when I say shorts, mine are longer than normal, so it'll fill 15, 20 minutes. But we'll just break it down. He gets up in the night, uses bathroom, goes back to bed, lays in bed. I don't think I've ever spoken about this. Laid there in the darkness, his foot, he's tall, so his full length of his body's on the bed, and he just turns over, and he's face to face with something that looks like a reptilian, literally. And it's slightly higher than him on the bed, and he knows it's longer than him, and it's there, looking at him, looking into his eyes.
No.
And this guy says, and I went, and obviously I can't do it, and he went in fear, drew his face back in fear, and he says, and this thing did the same gesture that he did. It just did it. And he said its mouth was just filled with teeth, and absolutely terrified him. I'll have to look at this ages since I visited this account, and it's now given me an idea to sort of revisit it. And I think he kind of clenched his eyes tight. He'd gone, and then it weren't there.
Oh no!
You know, I spoke to a guy yesterday who's had we had a Zoom call about a blue entity when he turned round in bed, and it's there looking at him. And that's the reason it's prominent in my mind. He says, because it smiled at him and it didn't have any ears. He says, and its mouth went right round to where its ears should be, and it was filled with little teeth. And he's done a painting for me, so we'll be doing this one as one of our YouTube films that we'll be putting on, because I've already written a lot up last night. And he's done this. It had 4 eyes. You know, I put my hand up.
Wow.
I mean, people tell me the wildest stories, but I get loads of emails. But I like to speak to the people to gauge where they're coming from. And this guy's really good education, really, really well spoken. And this thing, he said, had 4 red piggy eyes, above the 2 above the other. And incredible story, which, as I say, I'm going to write up and finish probably tonight. I've done most of it last night. But yeah, I don't know where we got to that. We're talking about the aliens and the reptilians. But yeah, that's
wild.
There's more things in heaven and earth, Holly. We just don't know, do we?
We just don't know. That's the thing. We just don't know.
And I'm aware if Les has arrived, we've got probably just over 45 minutes left. So have we got questions, Les?
Yeah, I have. Always have plenty of questions. We have great questions in from people on the chat, and I've got to thank Jessica again for sending those through. Some great questions. If I don't ask some of these out, you know what's going to happen, Paul? I'm going to get my ass kicked, as it were.
Yeah, yes. Well,
that's all. You're American now, Les.
Yes. Well, I've gone that way, yeah. Right then, so I'm putting this on the screen. I think we mentioned it earlier, or somebody mentioned it. We all need to get Kev and Holly. Sorry, I picked an half-time of the week last time. Okay, so I think Rod was asking a similar question, that we need to get Holly on the Bempton Cliffs and do a bit of CE5 down there. That would be interesting. I'd love to even just stand back and just be there. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens. Yeah, I think Debs and Wendy and the gang would be up for it. I think we've been threatening to ask you for a while anyway. So yeah, well, let's booked in. Let's do it. Yeah, I don't see why not. It'd be great. I'll put this one on from Tino. We did talk about it earlier, but I think he was asking, have you visited Bow Street in Liverpool? Yeah, I used to work and live on Bow Street, so many times. That's okay. Les, before you go to another question, just because I can see it and I will forget, Blue Shift in chat. We've spoke many times, but not for a while, and I want to speak to you about
something that happened to you. So
Okay.
over weekend, reach out to me, or I will to you. Thank you. Sorry about that.
A good question, and I think you might have touched on this one, Holly, a little bit earlier in some way. From the Reverend, does Holly not worry about attachments with allowing yourself to be an open door with you psychically and open to manipulation?
Yeah. Yes. I had a shaman here on Friday who said they removed things from my person because I'd been feeling really, really sick and not good. And I do that on a regular basis. I think, you have the hitchhiker effect where these things will, follow you back. People often talk about the negative hitchhiker effect, but they often don't talk about the positive hitchhiker effect. Yes, it is a concern. Yes, it's something I try to damage control. I practice grounding. I'm well versed in many different techniques. I know a lot of witches and druids and shamans and esoteric healers, and I practice so many weird and wonderful things to keep me of soundness where I can. In terms and to keep my aura and my psychic sphere okay. In terms of manipulation, it would be foolish and wrong of me to say that, the things that I do could make everything go away. And it is a concern, but I'm willing to roll that dice because my curiosity and my quest to investigate the unknown and find out what's happened to me, what's happening to other people, what this means for humanity, because this means something for humanity. I'm willing to roll the dice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, Holly. Tony D, what's your thoughts on orbs? Are they a species, drones, probes, or natural thing? Do you think they are connected to the human mind?
I think there's some kind of artificial intelligence that's morphed with some biologic type thing. I think it's future advanced technology. I think about it like this. If you're an advanced race beings, and you were going to go and check out these caveman-esque creatures that had nuclear bombs and they're always trying to kill each other, they can't get along, and they're absolutely killing the only home and planet they've got, and they're polluting everything, and they can't start fighting with each other, I don't think I'd want to zip over there and hang out with them. I would send some probes or drones or something that I'd send that to keep an eye on them a bit more. So I think the orbs are some kind of schmulch. Is that a word? Schmulch? There's some kind of schmulch of technology that we don't understand, that's intelligent, artificial, and maybe biological smushed.
Yeah,
right.
That was such a Holly answer, but it made sense.
Thanks, Holly. I think you've invented a new word for the dictionary tonight.
Thank you, Blue. I've just seen your reply. Okay, mate. Right,
okay,
go on,
so Yorkshire Grace 73. How would you recommend someone to become involved in practicing HICE?
I would recommend first for anyone who wants to expand their consciousness to work on themselves first, to really understand who they are and what they are, work on their shadows, work on themselves before wanting to work with others. Consciousness is about knowing that you are more than your physical body. So I would start within before we start out. So I would explore consciousness of self first. But if you did want to get into it, I would probably head down the C5 route first, because that's kind of an accessible way to get into it. But again, coming back to intent, if you just want to go and try and find aliens in a field, it's not going to work for you. So start with self. But if you are encouraged to go forth and make established contact, you know, I'm not a massive fan of Dr. Greer, but he is probably the best entry point through CE5. So I would start there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for that. And Karina Selby, perhaps the next step after contact CE5 is communication. A two-way process. It needs a rare open mind.
Absolutely. And I was so blessed. I don't know if you might remember, Paul, when I ran Whitley Strieber over in my wheelchair.
Yeah, you did hit him, didn't you, in wheelchair? A few
Yeah,
years ago.
and I rolled over in a wheelchair. I went, sorry, mate. Oh, Whitley Strieber. You know, you look at Whitley's, you know, his reader's book Communion, and you listen to him. You know, that man brings tears and joy at the same time to my life. He has a two-way process with the others. He communions, you know, he has communication, and, you know, his book Communion. I encourage anyone to read it if you haven't, or watch the film, but read the book. And, you know, I think he does that quite successfully.
Yeah. Okay, Les.
Yeah, I've got a Steve T question for you. You mentioned an interest in constellations. Is there a particular one that you have a focus on? And if so, why?
Pleiades. Well, it started, my granddad was a sailor. So I've always had a fascination with the stars. Some of my first memories are stargazing. I was born under Halley's Comet, which in my mum's weird brain meant I was meant to connect with the celestial realms. Anyway, I always had a fascination with the constellations. My granddad was a sailor, knew how to navigate through the stars. And we would always just look at the Pleiadian system, which he called the Seven Sisters. So it's just something I was always drawn to. So if we go back to my experience, even though I don't know if they do come from other star systems, the blue is often connected with Pleiades. So, you know, maybe I'm connecting 7 and 48 here, but I found that quite interesting. But the Pleiadian system's always, I have it, you know, I've got it around my neck. I have it all around my home. So yeah, it's part of my life.
Okay, thanks for that, Holly. I've got about 10 or 12 more questions here.
8 minutes left.
Yeah, well, yeah, depends how long you want to spend on some of these, Holly. And there's some great questions. Some of them you just cannot do in one sentence, I know. A TA is asking a curveball question from me. Just wondered if anyone has ever used a crystal ball.
Which one?
I've
got loads.
Right. So you have. Yeah.
So you have, yeah. Okay.
They're all over my house.
Alison's just put lots of questions tonight. Don't be disappointed if you don't get them asked. So I see Adam Sando there, and
Galber is asking, Holly, what are your thoughts on crop circles?
Some are man-made. I know that for a fact.
Yeah. Well,
incredibly, I didn't know where this we're going to go tonight, and that were going to be a question, because I know that you were going to. I know that we're going to be your answer, but we'll stick with the questions. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. So I got Lee Roscoe is asking, where do you stand on fairies?
Elementals.
You don't stand on them.
No, I absolutely adore fairies. You know, I think people have this, you know, manufactured view that fairies are like Tinkerbell and they're all when actually that's not the case. You know, we would often leave silver out for the fae when we were at home, or we were traveling through Ireland where the fae are, you know, they're definitely there in my view. So to me, the fae is another sort of non-human intelligence, again connected to the phenomena. But you know, we would leave silver out so they wouldn't come and mess with us in the night.
So or did Lee mean, where do you go to stand on fairies?
Don't stand on them, because they'll come and get you.
Yeah, I'm only
Don't
joking.
mess with them.
Right. Yeah. Not so much.
I leave offerings. There's always an offering out for the fae at certain times of the yearly calendar at my home, and when I'm on pilgrimages to certain, because I travel a lot in my spiritual practices. I go to Glastonbury and other places. We always leave something out for the fae. Always.
Okay. Right. Well, this one's, not so much a question. This next one was more of an observation, and a delightful one. The highlight of working Saturday was Holly's suit. Boom. Lovely to meet you, Holly. You're an excellent compare. There we go.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you. Hopefully, I'll be on that stage again later this year. So thank you.
Bit of a juggling question here in your family life from Penny Foster. Hi, Holly. How do you manage your day, job, or family, and then do all this phenomenon stuff?
Hi, my darling. Penny's a friend. Well, I'm a neurodiverse person. I only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And as far as I know, I'm not getting out of here alive. So I intend on filling it with every possible experience I can. I've got a great family that support me in this. I'm sure we'll come on to it further in the chat. But you know, I just find time. And when you're an experiencer and you don't know what the heck is really going on and what's happening to your friends and what's happening to you, I'm compelled to keep uncovering and opening doors and creating conversations, and I just find the time. But not sleeping helps. Yeah, and I didn't ask for this path. No. I didn't ask for any of this. It's been presented to me, and without sounding egotistical and full of myself, some of the things that have come to me in my work within the phenomena, it's happened so naturally, like it was just kind of meant. Yeah. I've not actively pursued anything. It actively pursues me. So I want to believe in signs and serendipity and synchronicity. If something comes up and I think it's worth doing, let's do it.
Okay. 4 minutes, Les.
Rick Allen.
We're sticklers for time, Holly. So, people will say, they do actually say to us, why can't you just go over? Or do you know what I mean? And we can.
No, they do. No, they ask us if we can go on all night, Paul.
Yeah, all night, yeah. But
we should be like Holly and have no concepts of time.
So we've got Rick
Time
Allen.
Is mere illusion.
Rick Allen, has Holly ever encountered a shadow person?
I've talked about this before. As a child, I used to see something, but I'm not so sure if it was a shadow person, and I had a very vivid imagination. So nothing that would make me go, "Urgh." But I know people that have. I know the claims about the hat guy and all of that stuff, but it scares me a little bit, this stuff.
Yeah.
So you notice there's a theme. If it gives me the creepies, I tend to go off in another direction. Yeah.
And I think that'll be all for the questions tonight. And thank you very much, Holly, for answering those in the way that you did. And I've got to say, a couple of suggestions are coming, Paul, for guests, and one of them was, would you believe, David Icke as a guest? And I think Tony Topping was mentioned, but
Tony, I've met Tony. I've not spoke to him in years, to be honest with you.
All I can say at this point, and nobody has been as delightful as our guest tonight, Holly, in my opinion. So yeah, we're going to thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And anybody that wants to contact you, are you open to speaking to them about their experiences, or?
Yeah, well, I do some work. I've just joined a fantastic organisation here in the UK called unhidden.org. Unhidden, NHI is in the in the wording, and it's my desire to be able to support experiences and create more positive conversations around experiences of the phenomenon, and of course more open conversations about disclosure and what that would mean for humanity. So I can't help everyone. My DMs don't stop, my Facebooks don't stop.
Do you find that you need to
sometimes
rest and step back?
And I'm learning that now, that I have to perhaps put some boundaries in place, because like you, Paul, we get contacted so much because people just want to tell someone what's happened to them, because they can't go to the doctor. What's the doctor going to say? Here, have some magic beans, you'll be fine. There's no services for people. There's no support functions for people. We've got limited resources. You've got the Experiencer Group a little bit over here, but in the States, you've got UAP Medical Coalition in the States run by Ted Rowe. Where is there for people to go when these life-changing and altering things have happened to them? Nowhere. So, I don't mind. Sorry.
But no platforms like yours like Truth Proof, what me and Les are doing, and loads of other people. And I know in chat that we've got doctors in chat. I actually know tonight we've got a scientist in chat. It's fascinating, yet, and I don't blame these people for not speaking out, because it's just not good.
Yeah, right. I've got to wind you both up now.
Okay.
And, we have gone over our time. I've got to thanks everybody for submitting the questions. Thanks, Jessica, for doing the moderating. And I've got to thank you too, Paul Sinclair and Holly.
Okay, Holly, Les, Jess for doing moderating, and everybody in chat. Thank you, and good night from me.
Good night.